The latest issue of Harvard Business Review has as its cover story my new book, Innovation Stagnation, The Death of Imagination in Business. And it really comes out of two things that happened to me. First, is that the pandemic saw my portfolio double. It was the best thing that could happen. But the price of that was that businesses lowered their operating costs by getting rid of their most creative, imaginative, talented employees, and innovation has started to plummet. I talked to friends and family, some family who used to work at places like Google and Apple and Amazon, and these are incredibly talented people who've just seen their organizations just become completely hollowed out of significant talent. I'm talking PhDs and engineers and the kinds of roles and responsibilities that these kinds of organizations are gonna need. Creative stagnation is now the latest buzzword of doom that I've been shepherding around to the boardrooms and corporate headquarters around the world. But there's hope, there's relief, and I point directly to places like New Future Laboratory that is doing an absolutely fantastic job at reintroducing creativity and imagination. I mean, they say imagine harder, that's their tagline. It's absolutely brilliant. They help organizations make sense of the opportunities for innovation and change through this unique approach they call design fiction. I can't recommend them highly enough. They have a book, it's called The Manual of Design Fiction, that lays out everything, and it's a beautiful book. They even have a shop of artifacts from the future in some of the books that they've written. Really looking forward to working with them again. It's Near Future Laboratory at nearfuturelaboratory.com. Great people over there. Have a look there, and don't forget, pick up my own book too, Innovation Stagnation, The Death of Imagination in Business. I think you can even get the audio version now. My assistant told me this morning after he screwed up my coffee order. Talk about stagnation. Anyone need a new assistant? I'm just joking. My guy's great.
Innovation Stagnation, The Death of Imagination in Business and How You Can Fix It in Your Organization in 12 Weeks or Less is available now wherever you buy, sell, swap, or trade books.
Last week from the Near Future Laboratory, episode 009 for weeks 51 and 52 of the year 2023. But first, the week 51 started out with a day trip to San Francisco, ostensibly to meet with Will to go over the synthesis and reflection protocol he's been running for Near Future Laboratory pro bono, I might add, which is exceptionally generous and for which I continuously contemplate the ways I can return the immense value he's bringing to my game. And maybe one way is to direct you to him. You can find Will over at formation.echo. That's formation.eco. It spit a bit of rain in San Francisco, so the flight from LAX was delayed for a couple hours, meaning everything moved to lunch with the NFL gang in San Francisco, which was warm and friendly and hella fun, and I would do that all the time if I could get up there as often as I'd like. And then it was the week of podcasts, all way more professionally produced than mine. There was Helen and Avi, who had me on as their inaugural guest on their Reality Plus podcast. I mean, just look at their podcast page and they've got it together enough to have it be one of those podcasts that you can listen to and watch. Super cool. Listen to their first episode.
The manual of design fiction, you talk about signals and faint signals, and it almost seems like on your path to working with the Hit Lab with Tom Furness and just kind of tuning in to what was happening with VR. It's almost seemed like you were kind of following these faint signals. Tell us a little bit about faint signals and how they're clues into the future.
So Avi, you mentioned Neil Stephenson coming by, which I remember, quite thoroughly, and we've come across each other in other projects over the years, and trying to make sense of like, what is this science fiction writer doing here with someone like Neil in particular? It's like they're combining their knowledge, like let's say on the ground technical knowledge, with this beautiful sense of like of story, I guess, in his case, and of being able to weave those into sliding it more towards like imagination. Like, what else could this mean? What are the other ways in which we can make sense of the technical specifications for, like a VR setup, or the technical specifications for even like a chipset, like you can see him like reading chipsets, like, oh, there are like a zillion stories in this one spec sheet. Let me tell you about a world in which this thing exists, and the stories and the people and the interactions and how it shifts and changes things. And I think that's, the weak signal thing is like really developing a sense of being able to amplify those things. Then there was Expedition Works with Randy, which you need to be both subscribed to and listen on the regular. Randy and I ran an experiment where we both took the tape and edited to our liking, and the outcome of that experiment is that we both like the same kinds of things in the conversation, which is remarkably reassuring.
Part of my job is to help bring imagination to structure. It brings me such joy to title a meeting invite like Jam Sesh, whatever you might say about the whole design thinking thing. I think what is interesting is how do we create the permission to allowing people to be free.
So check out Randy's work over at expedition.works. Finally, the last podcast of the year, I reckon, was this one from Adrian Tennant's In Clear Focus podcast from the Big Eye Agency. This one went into a curious territory around the question of design fiction in the context of marketing and communication, which, can be another way to think about what future work does, which is to create legible, engaging, compelling stories about possible futures. We oftentimes dismiss the value of marketing communication as propaganda, but I think there's an important way in which communication to a large-scale audience has certain viability for helping us imagine into possible futures.
Julian, let's start with a definition. What is design fiction?
Yeah, so definitions are beautiful and also sometimes tricky. I describe it as a method to vividly render tangible future scenarios before taking action or using those representations of possible futures to help guide and inform and shape decision making. So to flesh that out, it's the translation of ideas that an organization might have about what it wants to do in the future. And rather than representing those ideas as a statement, as a North Star statement, this is where we're trying to get to. I find that it is incredibly powerful and effective to have some kind of tangible representation of what that means in a form as if that future were obtained. So literally artifacts, things that in some future an archaeologist might dig up and try to wonder about. Oh, one thing that's been rattling around my head these last weeks of the year is that this time 9 years ago, I founded my company Amada. It was literally on the last day of the year, which made my accountant at the time perplexed, which made me wonder if I hadn't made some kind of rookie mistake. I never found out because I got rid of that accountant. But why do I bring this up? Well, it's because I wanted to show you this thing. It's an annual report from the future, one of my favorite design fiction archetypes. This annual report from the future was the design fiction way of revealing the fullest expression of the future strategy for Amada that was locked away in my imagination. I just got tired of doing a typical PowerPoint presentation to investors. Investors kept asking me what I see for the future of the company, and the only way I can even begin to translate all those scattered visions in my head was to put it in the form of this container of ideas. It offered me an opportunity to tell a richer story about the vision and future, and also resulted in a positive financial transaction. But more importantly, it helped me do the hard work of figuring the future out. I mean, this thing is 96 pages long, so it's pretty thorough, and not everyone has the wherewithal to be this complete. But if this is compelling to you and you're trying to clarify your vision and level up, I'd be happy to talk to you and see how Near Future Laboratory can help you create your annual report from the future. So I mention this because this is the kind of thing we do here at Near Future Laboratory. And we're actually getting ready now to start another design fiction project where we are creating an annual report from a possible future for a client in the energy sector, which is super exciting. Oh, also, I imagine doing a collaboration with one of my favorite designers, Paul Smith, who I really discovered through cycling. I created a prototype of what I imagine this collaboration would be. And I imagined what it might look like, and I posted it on Instagram because, well, why not? And then got a call from Sir Paul, who was excited by the prospect and decided to support the business by carrying my product on his site and in stores. Totally genius. The power of positive visualization or positive futuring, right? Until then, when tomorrow's now, this has been Last Weeks from the Near Future for weeks 51 and 52 of the year 2023. I'm Julian, and I'm out.
We have the data, and you're go for the align. Cut.